Hey babes! Today I'm doing a little challenge for myself where I paint 5 different sized flower pots, starting with the teeny tiniest one and working all the way up to this behemoth of a pot. This video is going to be really long, so enough chit chat, let's get started on these bad boys. Just like any other project, we need to start with a base coat of white so the colors we plan on using later can be brighter and we won't have to use as many coats. Aww. This pot was actually going to be an astronaut scene with aliens and a spaceman. I think it was going to be for my grandmother. Whatever, it gets painted white.
Now that every bit of the pot is painted white, we can go ahead and start with the littlest one first. Right off the bat, I struggled to come up with an idea for the smallest pot. I wanted to incorporate the size of it into the design, but there wasn't a lot that came to mind. And I will admit, I did something that I have forbidden myself to do. I stole this idea off Pinterest. I know, how basic and lame of me to not come up with an original design and do something that has already been done probably hundreds of times. That's my bad. But I genuinely couldn't think of something and I needed to get this project started, so this little pot is going to have to take one for the team in terms of originality. At some point, I decided the honey wasn't runny enough, so I repainted it and made it a bit brighter as well. Then I just have to finish the brown part of the pot. I wish I knew a technique to make the honey look more transparent, or I should say make it look like it is honey, just to give it some more character. I guess I'll have to work on that, but for now, all I know how to do is put highlights everywhere. My choices for designs on this pot were limited because there's only so much detail I can fit on such a tiny canvas. I definitely don't want to overload it. Still, I don't really like stealing ideas, especially such simple ones. I don't think it's too big a deal for this little one. I actually still can't think of a better idea, so it doesn't bother me that much. But I guarantee the moment a big, brilliant idea pops into my little head, I'll be out for blood. Moving on to the second pot of the night. I wanted this one to be a Starbucks cup. For the logo, I'm going to use the graphite technique where I draw the logo on one side of a piece of paper and completely cover the other side in graphite. I secured the paper to the pot with tape, that way the picture doesn't shift while I work. This will also help you peel it back to make sure it's marking the pot without losing your place. Then I trace the logo while it's on the pot. After that, the logo should show up on the pot very faintly, and we can bring in our Posca pen to cover it up.
For some reason, my green Posca pen didn't want to work properly. I would pump it, and it would explode all over my paint palette, but the paint itself didn't want to stick to the pen, so I had to dip it in its own paint and basically treat it like a paintbrush. Don't know why that happens.
After the logo's finished, I paint on those iconic green panels on either side of the cup. Except, Starbucks cups don't have green panels on the side. Nowhere did I find a Starbucks cup with green panels on the side. I don't drink Starbucks, so it's not like I see these cups all the time, but still, why did I think they had panels? It beats me, but when I started this project, I could have sworn that there were panels on the sides of Starbucks cups. I guess I got Mandela'd. Since we don't need these anymore, I'm going to use my very own X-Acto knife technique, which is just me cutting the paint off rather than painting coat after coat trying to cover it up. This works especially well on things that you wouldn't damage if your knife scraped against it. After all the paint is off, I cover up the mess with several layers of white paint, and we're back to normal. There, that's much better, and much more correct. The only thing left are some little details like the options for your drink on the back. I didn't mark any of the options because, well, I don't drink coffee, so I wouldn't know what tastes good.
For some added details, I'm going to take my brown Posca pen and very carefully draw a little coffee puddle in the bottom. And because it's hard to color the bottom of a pot with a pen, I decided to bring in a paintbrush. Before we call this pot finished, I wanted to add one last tiny little detail to really make this pot stand out. I thought adding a little lipstick stain would give it some unique class and character. It's a cute detail, making it look like someone drank the coffee. And it's relatable, am I right, ladies? I go back and forth with the red and white Posca pens to give it a streaky look.
I really want to convey that this is a lipstick stain rather than just a random lip attached to the cup. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. Oh, now that's a fancy cup of coffee. Back to our lineup, our collection is coming along nicely.
For this next bit, I'm actually going to be working on these next two pots at the same time in order to make this process go by a little faster.
Our third pot is going to be a pint of ice cream. I didn't want to make it a brand named pint of ice cream. Instead, I wanted to do a more original and custom design. It's going to be a pint of strawberry ice cream, so I'm doing a yellow and pink color scheme. I was using reference for where to put things like the nutrition facts and other promotional details so it wouldn't look so random and sporadic.
Excuse me, ma'am. You're out of the frame. Ma'am. Ma'am.
Well, this is just embarrassing. Now, as long as I can stay in frame, I'm gonna go ahead and add strawberries around the pint as well as the strawberry chunks that are in the ice cream. Except I decided that I wanted to shade that scoop of ice cream and had to cover up the chunks that I just painted. The chunks shone through the pink and I could add them back exactly where they were before, so it really wasn't a problem and I complained for nothing.
I wanted everything to pop out from the background, so I painted an orange shadow around everything and made it into a gradient.
This pot was another one that I didn't really have a strong idea for going in. I knew I wanted to make an ice cream themed pot, but I kinda made up the design as I went along, and it just worked out. I can't say that for other pots, as we'll soon find out with the last pot, but this one's cute. For the name of this ice cream brand, I thought I'd stick with something a little homemade. I really like how the logo came out. It gives the whole pint a cartoony look. It looks like something you'd find in a wholesome indie game. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to paint realistic strawberries, because realism is not my strong suit, nor is it a medium I find particularly interesting. I'd like to practice it a bit more, but I did my darndest to make this cut open strawberry look good, and I think it turned out really nice, even though I say that about everything I make. I jotted down random things that came to mind while writing the nutrition facts. I figure it was as good as any spot to make it even more personalized. I don't want to copy an actual legal nutrition fact sheet word for word because that would be way too convoluted for this type of design. It's detailed yet simple, and it has such a pretty color palette. Like I said, I made this design up as I went along, but it really came together, especially with some of the small details I added. And with the last touch-ups and the bottom painted, we have our strawberry chunks ice cream pint complete. Moving on, this fourth pot will make you understand why I didn't want the last one to be name brand. I already planned to do a Starbucks and an icy flower pot, but I'd hate to only make name brand stuff without letting myself be creative. This design is simple enough. I sketched the icy logo, but you could use the graphite technique we talked about earlier to make it easier. I'm just much better at copying word art than I am copying a picture. I made it a point to paint the logo last in case any of the background stripes smudged into the area where the logo would be. I freehanded all of the blue stripes and started to work on the red stripes when I got the bright idea to use masking tape to make this process go by a lot faster. Once that's done, the tape comes off to reveal those pretty little lines. I just spit on my computer. Yewies. Oh look! It's the return of being out of frame! Everyone, point and laugh! The idea for this video kinda came out of nowhere. I've painted flower pots like this in the past, not counting the Pokemon ones I did a while back because that was for a commission, but flower pots that look like real-life containers. That sounds really stupid when I try to explain it. But anyway, I wanted to do it again, but in a more formal video that would better explain what I like to paint. The first thing I needed were ideas for the pots. I went to Walmart and decided to check out the garden section just to see if anything would come to mind, when I found the tiny pot and the biggest pot. That's when the idea popped into my head to do a video like this with 5 different sized flower pots, and the only thing left to worry about was what to paint. Which is why I keep saying that I'm making things up as I go. Ices come in many flavors, but for the sake of aesthetic and the fact that these are the best flavors, I'm sticking with red and blue as the details inside. With those two finally out of the way, we can take on this behemoth of a flower pot. It's almost as big as your mom. I had a basic idea for this pot. I wanted it to be the bigger version of my already made popcorn pot. The problem is that I hadn't fully come up with a design before I started painting. I knew I wanted it to say jumbo and extra buttery to fill more of the space instead of just having a bigger replica of my small pot. With my first pass, I liked how the word buttery looked, so I kept it. But that was about the only thing I liked, because I changed everything else. I sketched out a scene on the back depicting 2 main places people would be eating popcorn: the movies and a carnival. I figure this is something a popcorn company would actually do, seeing as how those are probably the biggest investors in popcorn. My first idea was to use only 3 colors for the scene: yellow, orange, and red. But let's face it, this looks really bad. It seems like every project I do, I have to fix a major mistake I made. That's art, I guess. I re-sketched my scene and blocked out the colors, hopefully spacing everything better as well. Now we just have to paint it. Enjoy this montage. And the song's over, so I have to talk again. After all of the color is put down, I'm drawing all of the popcorn outlines for the bottom. After that, I thought it would be cute if there were a lot of popcorn pieces floating around, again, to fill up some space. Originally, I wanted to glue on flowers to the outside of the pot and make it look like popcorn was spilling out, but after everything was painted, my mom and I both thought that that would make it look so weird, so I ditched the idea. Now, here's the questionable part. I painted the background the same color as the popcorn on the bottom. This didn't undo what I just did, which was paint the popcorn all over, because when I painted that, I painted them on so thick that I could still tell where they were. But I'm honestly still not sure what other color would have made a better background. I feel like this pale yellow just kinda consumes the whole painting without letting any of the other colors breathe. I did the brickwork behind the word popcorn and used purple to outline the logo and complement that yellow. Now I'm thinking I could have used more purple accents to pull weight off that yellow. We'll just have to treat this as a learning experience. I did a small gradient on the word popcorn to make it have more detail, and finally, I lay our last brick down on the top rim of our final and biggest pot. Now it is complete. My overall plan for these pots is to sell them locally because, well, I don't want to deal with shipping. I think it's a really good way to earn some extra money. Plus, the materials for this project are really cheap, so you wouldn't go in the hole by making these and selling them. I'd love to keep them around the house, but I just don't have the space for them, so I'm gonna have to give them up. It's always hard for an artist to part with their original piece, but I have to do its best. If you followed along or made your own design for a flower pot, please share it with me on Instagram. A link will be in the description. To seal them, I'm using Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish, along with a few coats of watered-down acrylic matte varnish for extra protection. But we aren't finished just yet. I went to my closest Dollar Tree and found the perfect flowers for each of the pots. Once I'm happy with all of the flowers I've picked, it's time to finally finish this project. Here's the before, and here's the after. Ooh, I'm so happy with how they turned out. I love how simple the Starbucks one looks. The icy and the ice cream ones are fighting for my favorite. I love how the icy one looks, but I love the arrangement I found for the ice cream. It looks perfect. When I started this project, I was so sure the popcorn would be my favorite, but honestly, I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any flowers at the dollar store that would fit in the honey pot. So, to make up for that, I sculpted a little bee out of Crayola air dry clay and borrowed some flowers from my small popcorn pot I keep mentioning. And there we have it. All 5 of our flower pots are complete. Each of these pots was so fun to make, and I'm really happy with all of them, yada yada yada, things that every YouTube artist says. But seriously, this was fun, and I will do it again. Maybe not to the different sized shtick, but a more calm, maybe 3 pots at a time type series with the challenges sprinkled in here and there. If you like this too, and want me to make a series out of it, let me know by leaving a like. Be sure to comment which pot is your favorite and what you'd like to see me paint next. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an upload. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!